But I think my second takeaway is that David Culley was a good hire. And I'm going to get, a little bit Texan centric here because not a lot of people are going to talk about him. And especially because, my team just played him. The Texans, I remember, a couple of my group chats, people were like, oh, this team's going 1-16. Tyrod who, like, he's not going to do well with the Texans. I immediately stopped them. Like the Texans, I remember saying Jacksonville could get 7 wins, and I think I should have switched it around. I was high on both of them, or saying like, Texans wouldn't be as bad as people think. Because look, Tyrod, for example, Tyrod Taylor, and I know he's got the hamstring, but he has a winning season under his belt. And I think I've said this 100 times on this podcast, but he's been a good quarterback wherever he's gone. He's been very serviceable. And I think David Culley, right, to go specifically to him, he's a player's coach. You can see it, right? So against the Browns, he ran onto the field to the midpoint of the entire field just to help the Texans kind of run this play. And I think what he's kind of instilled in this team is that fighting mentality. And I think, for example, when Tyrod goes down, and I want to give a huge shout out to Brandon Cooks, because this is another guy that I'm very, very high on, especially this year. When Tyrod went down, Cooks immediately calls up the Texans offensive coordinator and starts calling out which plays he wants to run that he sees in the teeth of the Browns defense. And some of them actually work. And he was talking to Davis Mills about what he sees, where, gaps in the zone, what he wants to run. And every time, right after Davis Mills threw a pick to Malcolm Smith, Cooks immediately goes to him along with David Culley, and they kind of sat him down and said, hey, you're going to be all right. So I think, obviously the Texans this season is not really going to be one of that much hope, but in terms of future long-term success, I think David Culley should be here to stay. And at least for this year, he's earned a lot of my respect these first 2 weeks. And I think the Texans are going to be in a lot of games, and don't always bet, the minus whatever forever bet against the Texans, because I think they can cover a lot of these games. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen from David Culley so far.
I wouldn't say he was a good hire just yet, but he wasn't as bad as I thought before. I thought he was going to be downright horrible, but as you said, the players have bought into him. That is something that, I always look for in a coach. That's something that Urban Meyer just hasn't gotten a grip on. He's lost the locker room. And even before week 1, he lost them. So that's just downright terrible. And that's why the Jags are as bad as we think they're going to be. But I mean, David Culley, there was not much in his favor. He was basically, in a David versus Goliath situation in which he's David. And he was just, nothing was going his way. So for him to kind of recuperate and be at least 1-1 and hang in that Browns game, that's definitely impressive. Is it sustainable over an 18-game season, though? I'm not sure. That's where I'm not sold on David Culley just yet. But I will say I have been somewhat impressed by him, and I don't think the hire was as bad as we originally thought.
Yeah, I do like David Culley, and I know you guys have mentioned that. I want to touch on, though, the way that they constructed their roster, because we were kind of really confused throughout the majority of the offseason, because they were signing guys and upon guys and just so many players. And it was kind of like they were building kind of a ragtag team, but it's worked out really well. They have a lot of depth. They were signing guys that no one wanted, like Desmond King and Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, and they've created a team where, these guys have played before. They know what to do. They know how to win games because they come from all walks of life. And I think David Culley has been able to bring the good parts out of that. And honestly, don't be shocked come trade deadline time, the Texans make 4 or 5 trades, shipping these guys off and kind of reeling in draft picks to start really building the future of this team. I know that we kind of discounted them because we just thought, there really isn't enough star power there. Like, they just traded JJ Watt. Look at all the stuff going on with Deshaun Watson. But the Texans have been good in the past couple years. And honestly, they've got a lot of guys who can be impact players. I like Justin Reed. Brandon Cooks has had 1,000 yards every season for as long as I can remember. And they've got a decent running back rotation. Now, I think there will be some questions with Davis Mills, and we'll see tonight. We're recording this on Thursday. The Texans play on Thursday Night Football against the Panthers. So this is kind of a big test for them, because if they can hang in this game, I'd be confident in them winning 4 or 5 games for the rest of the year and competing against some teams. And I would probably at that point expect them to not come last in the division, like almost everyone had them coming into the year. I really like David Culley, and especially when you compare it to the hire of Urban Meyer and what we've seen so far from the Jaguars, looks even better than that hire.